Okay, so we're in a new location today. Hopefully this is just temporary. Basically, it's really hot in the UK today. My camera keeps overheating after about 10 minutes of filming. And so I've relocated from upstairs where I normally film to downstairs where it's a little bit cooler. So hopefully I'll get a bit more record time out of this. But what I'm here to do today is record my Q2 wrap up. So as always, I'm going to start off by giving you the stats for my reading for the months of April, May and June, and also we'll be sharing my favourite books from the quarter. Okay, so I read 45 books in total in the last 3 months, which brings me right on target, and I've now completed 90 books for the year, which means I'm exactly halfway to my reading target of 180 books for the year. In total, that means I've read 15,132 pages, which is an average of about 166 pages per day. So a pretty decent reading average for me, and I'm really pretty pleased with how I've got on so far. In terms of how I read these books, 4 of them were ARCs, 6 were audiobooks. One I started to read as an audio and finished it as a physical book. I read 5 ebooks, so books that I physically purchased, 27 books by Kindle Unlimited, and then 2 physical books as well. In terms of star ratings, I had 4 3 stars, 7 3.5 stars, 14 4 stars, 15 4.5 stars, and 5 5-star reads, and I'm going to be telling you about those today, as well as mentioning a few of my favourites of the 4.5 star category as well. Then in terms of the genres, it was a pretty good spread of books. I had 2 alien romances, 2 contemporary, 10 dark, 2 erotic romances, 1 fantasy, 1 historical, 11 mafia, 2 MC, 1 MM, 1 monster, 1 Omegaverse, 2 paranormal, 4 small town, and 5 sports romances. Okay, so without further ado then, I'm going to dive straight into all of my 5-star reads that I read over the last 3 months. And I'm going to start with A Cage of Ice and Echoes by Godwin. So I've talked about this many times before. I also did a kind of an extended review on this one. I'll link that video in the description box down below. This was an absolute 5-star read. It's a masterpiece, but it's also book 2 of a trilogy. It's part of the Frozen Fate trilogy. Book 1 I absolutely enjoyed as well. That was one of my favourites from Q1, which was Hills of Shivers and Shadows. And then book 3 will be coming out in August, I believe, and I'm highly anticipating that read as well. So if you've not heard me talk about this one before, this one is a very dark romance. Like I said, it is book 2 in the Frozen Fate trilogy. We're following the same characters throughout this trilogy, and it very much starts with a woman called Frankie who is married to a man called Monty. She finds out she's pregnant, they have an argument about it, he goes off to work and they agree that they're going to talk about it when he gets back from work, but while he's away she gets kidnapped by a man named Denver and then taken to a very remote place in North Alaska, where then she has to live alongside Denver and his 3 sons, Wolfson, Kodiak and Leonid. Now, like I said, this is a very, very dark romance. It's also very suspenseful. It had me on the edge of my seat the whole way through. And basically in book 1, we're just figuring out, you know, why Frankie's been taken, who these people are, how they're all related, and really Frankie is really trying to figure out how she's going to escape the situation that she's in and get home to her husband. This is a romance though, and we also know it's a polyamorous relationship, so Frankie's going to end up with more than one of these characters, and as we go through this story we kind of learn more about them, like I say, and she develops very strong relationships, in particular with Denver's sons. Book 1 ends on a massive cliffhanger as we go into this second book, book 2, and several of the characters, and including Frankie, are now literally this book is less about a kidnapping and a captive situation and more of a situation of survival and escape, because they are left in a situation where they have no way of getting out of the situation they're in. The only way out is by plane. They don't know how to fly it. And also it's very, very cold and the weather is too severe for them to actually even attempt a departure. It's too far away for them to walk, and they're running out of fuel so that they cannot heat the home that they're in. So they're going to get very, very cold, and also they're running dangerously low on food, and so they're going to have a very hard time making sure that they're fed. It's quite a harrowing tale of how they're going to survive this very, very harsh winter, looking for clues so that when the weather finally breaks and they have an opportunity to leave, they're going to be able to do so. And like I said, it's just absolutely fantastic writing. Pam Godwin does a fantastic job keeping you on the edge of your seat, and falling so in love with these characters and just wanting them to get out and to survive. And again, in this book, it does have a bit of a cliffhanger, not quite as dramatic as at the end of book 1, and these characters definitely have found a lot of answers. They're in a slightly safer place than when they left, but as we go into book 3, we're going to find out that actually even when they've kind of returned to civilization, shall we say, they may be in more trouble now than they were before. So like I said, I cannot absolutely wait for the final book in this trilogy. I would highly recommend. Then another 5-star read, which I actually read in the month of June. So I've just reviewed this book in my June wrap-up video. This is Surrender by Sam Mariano and Laura Lovett. This is book 4 in the Coastal Elite series, but as I said before, this was originally written and published as Sophie's Surrender, and more recently, as Sam has been writing her Coastal Elite series, she has edited this slightly, given it a revamp, changed its name to Surrender, and also added in a bonus chapter called the Sleeping Beauty chapter, which gives us a little bit more insight into some of the characters in this series so far and what may be in store for them going forward. So I absolutely loved this book. It is another dark romance. It's also forced proximity, a bit of a captive situation with an obsessed hero. He's a typical Sam Mariano character, so he is completely obsessed. Love at first sight, or at least instant feelings of possession at first sight. And our main hero in this one is Sylvan. Now, Sylvan comes from a very wealthy and influential family. His father is definitely morally grey, as much as Sylvan is, and he's not going to bat too much of an eyelid when Sylvan is going to kidnap our heroine Sophie and force her to stay with him for the weekend. In fact, force her to stay with him until she relents and agrees that she has feelings for him and she's going to be his girlfriend. And his dad is only too happy to suggest very strongly that that is what happens, otherwise she's going to have severe consequences. So definitely, like I said, a typical Sam Mariano hero, with a family that is completely supportive of his crazy personality and actions as well. So please read your trigger warnings, because there is some dub con in here and also some non-con scenes as well. However, like I said, I absolutely love this one. Sylvan felt to me like a very kind of dark, morally grey hero, but he also had a much softer side than some of the other heroes that we've read about, and I really did warm to him and his personality and how much he clearly cared for Sophie. And this one starts very much when Sylvan is hosting this Halloween party. He's dressed as a Viking. He is very kind of like big and strong sort of character, very handsome. And our female character Sophie, she really doesn't like socializing. She really doesn't like going out to parties, but her mother and also her roommate have kind of peer pressured her into kind of going out. And they say, you know, you can't be scared to go out, you're going to have a great time, go out. And so she takes this opportunity to go to this Halloween party, just really to appease her mum more than anything else. And of course, when she gets there, Sylvan is going to spot her, take an instant shine to her, and decide then that he's going to take her to his room that he's set up. It's an escape room that he set up for his guests, but basically he's going to take her there and then kind of trap her in this room, and the only way to escape basically is to solve the clues. Of course, he's not going to be too helpful, and the last sort of room in this sort of escape room situation is a bedroom, and he's going to take full advantage of that while he's there. But like I say, Sylvan, although morally grey, he also recognises when Sophie panics, realises that maybe it's not just because she doesn't want to be with him, but something may have happened to her in her past, and he's quite kind of very receptive and open to that, very observant of her reactions. And of course, he is not going to take no for an answer, but he is going to be very sympathetic towards how she feels. And I felt really then warmth, more softness towards Sylvan myself. I really did like him in here and how he treated Sophie. So again, a fascinating read, absolutely loved it. Love this character, love this next instalment in the Coastal Elite series, and would highly recommend if you haven't started the series yet. Then the next 5-star rating I gave was for God of War by Rina Kent, and this is also a book that I read in the month of June. And this one is book 6 in her Legacy of the Gods series, and it focuses on Eli and Ava. Now, we have seen Eli and Ava obviously throughout the rest of the series. This has been a highly anticipated read for me. I was really intrigued by their relationship and why they hated each other so much, because it was clear that they really did both like each other, and I was just very intrigued for their story. Now, this is a dark romance series, as you'd expect from Rina Kent, but this one has a very different vibe to the other ones in the series, and although I rated it 5 stars, it's definitely not my favourite in the series, and it was also quite difficult to read because of the content and the subject matter that was in here. So this one is an amnesia romance. It's also enemies to lovers and a marriage of convenience, and basically this one starts 2 years after everyone has graduated. So all of the characters that we've come to know and love are now all together. They've got the HEA, some of them have got married, some of them are engaged, and we do see them in this story. So they are very much still part of this world and part of this story, but this very much, like I say, focuses on Eli and Ava. And essentially it starts where Ava wakes up in a hospital bed 2 years from her last memory, and she's basically got selective amnesia. She cannot remember the last 2 years of her life. And when she wakes up, she also finds out that she's married to Eli, which she is completely shocked by because she believed that she hated him, and there's absolutely no way that she would agree to marry him. However, then what we start to then figure out is she clearly did marry him, so why would she do something like that? And so some of her very last memories that she can remember up to the point where she loses her memories are very disturbing, and she starts to wonder exactly what's happened. Eli is not going to be completely upfront with her straight away and tell her everything, but as we go through this story, we start to have some flashbacks and start to uncover some more of the story by either through what she remembers or from what her friends tell her and what she can glean from some of the things that Eli says to her. And so she starts to figure out how she could have possibly come to this situation where she is now married to Eli. What we also find out is that Ava has some very serious mental health issues that are she's kind of inherited, if you like. They're genetic, because actually from her parents' story, we know that her grandmother was seriously mentally ill, and she seems to have somehow inherited this mental illness, and it's really difficult to watch and see as she's struggling with her life. And she is definitely dependent on medication. She needs to make sure she takes it, but of course, as she's gone through her college years, she's also chosen to self-medicate with alternative drugs and also alcohol and lots of crazy partying. Now, what we come to understand is, and very much what I believe from the beginning, is that Eli isn't as cool and cold as we believe him to be, and he does care for Ava quite a bit, and he's chosen to be cruel, to be kind, because he felt like her family and her friends were being too soft with her, letting her get away with too much, and he's decided that he's going to take control in order to make sure that she can heal from, her situation. But it is very tough to read. I actually read this in parts, so I probably read it over the course of 5 days in smaller chunks. But like I said, I still thought it was absolutely fantastically written, even though it was difficult to read, and I could not rate it anything other than 5 stars. So I would highly recommend this whole series if you haven't read it. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And like I said, although this one isn't my favourite in the series, it definitely deserves a 5-star rating for sure. Then one of the last books that I read this month, so actually, like I say, I actually had a really good reading month in the month of June, and that is another Sam Mariano, which is Brutal Ambition. And this is a standalone, but it is a spin-off to the Coastal Elite series, and in fact this one happens in the same timeline as Surrender. So this one also kicks off really at the Halloween party that Sylvan has hosted, and this time we are following 2 different characters. We are following Killian and Bryn. Now, Killian is our dark hero. He is a member of a secret society called the Blue Bloods. In fact, we find out that Sylvan is also a member of this secret society, and also our very good friend Dare from book 1 is also now in college and a member of this secret society. So like I say, it's not technically part of the Coastal Elite service, but it's definitely a spin-off, and we do have some cameo appearances from other characters in this series. Now again, this one starts, like I said, at this Halloween party. Killian is there, and he is also wearing a mask, and he's actually dressed up quite ironically as a blue blood, even though it's supposed to be a secret society, but everyone else is too stupid to realise what he's actually dressed as. But the reason he's there is because he's heard that there's another group of people at this university who are kind of wannabes. They wanted to be part of this secret society, but they couldn't get in, so they're going to try and start their own. And they think the best way to do this is obviously to take a virgin, this virgin's virginity as a group, and then basically unalive her, give her up as a sacrifice, basically, as kind of the foundation and the basis for this secret society that they're going to start. Of course, the Blue Bloods hear about this. They're not too happy. They want to make sure that it doesn't cause any problems for them, and also they're going to put the wannabes in their place. And so Killian is there at the moment when Bryn is obviously taken. She's going to be our sacrificial virgin, and he kind of steps in and essentially rescues her. And so she very much sees him at first as her sort of her guardian, her hero, and he is quick to tell her, I am not a hero. I'm the furthest thing from a hero I could be. I haven't rescued you to be altruistic or because I'm a good person. I'm doing it for my own means because I didn't want this other group to interfere with what we're doing. Of course, then he takes an instant like to Bryn and makes a decision that he's going to make her his, and then persuades her to spend the night with him, you know, for safety, because these guys might come and try and get her again or whatever, and kind of their relationship really goes from there. Now again, this had a slightly different vibe to some of the Coastal Elite books, and Killian in particular was a slightly different type of hero. I think he's obviously still dark, he's still very morally grey, but he is also slightly different in that he doesn't necessarily have his own wealth. He's part of the Blue Bloods because he's trying to reach a certain lifestyle that he wants. He knows the connections that he's going to make are really going to set him up for life. And he's really got this very ambitious goal of what he wants to achieve. But he certainly didn't come directly from money. So he seems to have slightly less power than some of the other heroes have had in the we've seen in the past, who have kind of been independently financially wealthy. And although he does have access to quite a lot of funds, again, this is kind of, I guess, where one of his weakness comes in, if you like, because he is more dependent on the Blue Bloods than, say, some of the others. So he definitely is very brutal, he's very ambitious, but he's not quite as cruel as some of the other heroes we've seen before, and he's very soft towards Bryn, in fact. And actually, for the first sort of 35% of this book, I was really waiting for the other shoe to drop, because Killian just seemed far too nice for his own good. I mean, not nice by, you know, normal everyday standards, but certainly nice by Sam Mariano hero standards. And I was really waiting for the other shoe to drop. It was like, this guy's actually been really nice, very reasonable. When she said no, he would try and push her a little bit, but eventually relent. And so, yeah, like I say, I was waiting for the turn, and it did take a turn, absolutely it did. And he showed more of that dominant personality, that kind of hero that we have come to know and love, that won't take no for an answer. But also I felt like he was a little bit more relaxed than some of the others, although he is absolutely going to make sure that Bryn becomes his, and he's not afraid to do anything that he has to make sure that he gets what he wants. So again, I thought this was fantastic writing. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Great to see some of the cameo characters, and would definitely recommend. And then literally the last book I've just read, the last book I've just reviewed as part of my June wrap up, was False Start by Kandi Steiner. This was another new release. It came out on the 7th of June. It's a sports romance, and it's book 5 in the Red Zone Rivals series. And I could not help myself but rate this one 5-star, mainly because of the amount of crying I did at the end of this book, because it was so emotional, really heartfelt, and yeah, really got me and brought me to tears. So like I said, I had to give this one 5 stars. In this one, we're following Kyle, Robbins and Madeline, and Kyle was a very interesting character from the other 4 books. So the first 4 books were basically following other couples, but they were all, the main male characters were all part of the same football team at university, and they've kind of gone on then, they've all graduated now and they've gone on to be professional football players in the NFL, and Carl Robbins is no different. But while they were at college, Carl was complete and utter idiot, basically. He was very self-centered. He only cared about himself. He cared about his stats on social media and getting sponsorship deals, and wasn't particularly a team player. But over the course of the 4 books, we learn more about Carl, and we start to think that maybe there's something more to him than meets the eye. And by the time we get to his book, book 5, we absolutely find out that he is a wonderful, wonderful character underneath all of the bravado that he's kind of been showing in the previous 4 books. What we learn is that Carl used to be madly in love with a girl called Madeline. When they were just teenagers, they became very good friends, fell in love, ended up sleeping together, and then tragically they were kind of like separated. Something happened between their parents, which forced them apart, and Carl believed that Madeline turned away from him, and Madeline believes that Carl has turned away from her, and they've kind of held on to a little bit of resentment and sadness about how this relationship ended, and Carl's parents basically moved away to a different town and they kind of lost touch. But now Carl, like I say, he's a professional football player. He's in his rookie year. He's moved to Seattle and he needs basically a house to live in. So he contacts this real estate agent to help him find a house in the area, and that real estate agent happens to be Madeline. And of course, when he shows up at this house and she happens to be there, they instantly recognise each other. Of course they do. And all of the feelings that they had before come back. But he realises that in the time that they've been apart, she has been married and has a 6-year-old child, but unfortunately her ex-husband was very abusive towards her, and Carl also sees this, is not too happy, and as a result he basically says that he will protect her, that he'll fake date her basically to keep the ex at bay, and protect her from the ex, but in return she's going to go with him to Clay and Gianna's wedding, which is a couple from Blindside. Now, what I absolutely loved about this couple was the fact that they were childhood sweethearts. Yes, they held on to a lot of sadness about what happened in their relationship, but there was no miscommunication in this. There was no angst particularly, and there was no third act breakup, and I absolutely loved that. This couple were really mature. They basically chose to have a conversation about what happened. They didn't jump to conclusions. They didn't misunderstand what the other person said, and they really took the time to listen to kind of exactly what happened. And when they realised that neither of them were at fault, it was something that happened between their parents, then they start to realise all of the wonderful years that they've missed being together. And so with that comes not only happiness that they found each other again, but also a great amount of sadness for what they've kind of, the time that has been wasted basically that they could have been together. And Carl is such a fantastic boyfriend. He treats Madeline so well. He is completely swoon worthy. And also Madeline's little boy, Sebastian, he is also really cute. I really liked him as well, and the relationship that he had with Kyle. Now, like I said, there's no angst or drama between them as a couple, which was great to see, and the only real kind of drama in this story is with the ex. But of course Kyle has the financial means to make sure that that's not going to be a problem, and make sure that Madeline is absolutely 100% taken care of and gets the life that she deserves. So like I said, I really, really like this one, and quite a lot of the ending of this book I found myself tearing up and crying just because of how emotional it was, how in love they both were, and some of the things that kind of like, you know, they said to each other was absolutely beautiful, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So 5 stars. Okay, so they're the 5-star reads from the last quarter, but I also had quite a lot of 4.5-star reads. Now, I'm not going to talk about them all today. I'm going to give 3 books an honourable mention. So the first one is also another book I read in the month of June, which is King of Greed. Now, I started to listen to this one as an audiobook and then finished it in this physical copy. Now, this one is book 3 in the Kings of Sin series, and the audiobook was narrated brilliantly by Teddy Hamilton and Vanessa Vasquez. And like I said, I listened to about half of it on audiobook and then switched to the physical book. This is a contemporary billionaire romance. It's also a second chance romance because it's about this couple who have been married for 10 years, and their marriage is very much in trouble, and how they're going to rekindle their relationship. So we're following Dominic and Alessandra. So Dominic is our king of greed. Basically, he and Alessandra met in college. They fell madly in love with each other and got married straight out of college. And while Alessandra did come from a reasonably wealthy family, Dominic came from a much poorer family, and his main ambition was to get a good job, set up his own business and really grow his business and earn a lot of cash. His main goal was to give Alessandra everything that he believed that she deserved, so that they would never have to worry about finances again, and they could live in a state of luxury. The thing is, the more he acquired, the more success he had, the more he wanted, and he became petrified that if one mistake would mean that he would lose it all. And so he became so focused on his work, so focused on his company and making money, that he started to lose what was really important in his life, and that is Alessandra. And over the years, he's broken more promises than he's made. He has forgotten dates, he's got home late, he stopped talking to her, stopped treating her well, until the point where it's now their 10th year anniversary. He's promised her that he's going to be home early so that they can go away for the weekend and celebrate their anniversary. And when another emergency comes up at work, he forgets all about his anniversary, forgets to come home early, and leaves Alessandra sitting there waiting. And this is the final straw that breaks the camel's back, because she can't take any more. She's absolutely heartbroken. She loves her husband so much, but she can't take any more. She decides she's going to leave him and file for divorce. Now, this is absolutely the wake-up call that Dominic needs. He suddenly realises all of the mistakes he's made, and starts to realise how much he's hurt Alessandra and damaged their relationship over the years. And he then spends the rest of this book grovelling, and this man grovels. He is determined to do anything it takes to win her back, anything it takes to win her trust, anything it takes to prove to her that he's telling her the truth, and he's not going to make the same mistake if she is to forgive him. And so this is a very kind of like heartbreaking but heartwarming tale of how this couple kind of rekindle their relationship and go back to the very beginning to figure out who each other is, what they want in life, to become independent people, but also realise what's most important to them, and that's each other. And Dominic really does start to change his ways and put Alessandra first. Then I also want to give a shout out to When the Earl Met Its Match by Stacy, Reid. Now, this is an historical romance, and it's book 4 in the Wedded by Scandal series. We're dealing in this one with a mute hero, not his baby trope, and also a marriage of convenience. I really enjoyed this one. In fact, it was my biggest surprise. So if you've read my mid-year freak out tag video, you'll know this is my biggest surprise of the year, because I don't always gravitate towards historical romances. They're not really my jam. I keep trying them periodically to see if I will like them, but more often than not, I'm disappointed. They're just not dark enough, they're just not edgy enough, and also the language is quite flowery, because, you know, it obviously mimics kind of like historical language, and also the fashions of the time and the attitudes of the time as well, and it's not really for me. However, I was absolutely delighted with this book. I thoroughly enjoyed it, so gave it 4.5 stars. And like I said, in this one we're following a mute hero, and his name is Hugh. He's actually the future Earl of Albury, but he's not the biological son of his father, and this has caused a bit of a scandal in the past because his mother actually had an affair with somebody else. However, the Earl of Albury has absolutely taken him as his own son, loves him as much as if he is his own son, but to ensure that his son didn't have to kind of face the whisperings in high society, they have been living in their Scottish kind of castle, if you like, for a number of years. But the current Earl of Albury is a very old man. He knows that he is going to die soon, and he really wants Hugh to kind of re-enter society and take his place back where he belongs in London society. And so he has put an ad in the paper for a wife, because he wants Hugh to have a wife of very high standing, and that will help him, he thinks, when he goes back to London and has to kind of face the ton. And this is where we kind of then are introduced to Phoebe. Phoebe is the daughter of a duke, and so is very high standing. However, She is in love with a marquis. In fact, somebody who's teaching her to play the piano, and she really, really wants to marry him, but her parents are adamant that she marries this really old, wrinkly guy that she doesn't really want to marry. And so she thinks that a good way to get out of that is if she ruins her virtue, sleeps with this piano teacher, and then convinces her parents to let him marry her instead. Of course, the parents are absolutely horrified, and this really blows back in their face because they actually pay off this marquis, this piano teacher, to disappear and never come back. They give him quite a lot of money, £20,000, and he kind of leaves. Now she's heartbroken, and even more so when she finds out she's pregnant. And when she tells her mother, because she's very scared, her mother decides that she's going to cart her off to the country, let her have the baby, then put the baby in a orphanage, I guess, and then she can re-enter society and no one will know. Of course, Phoebe is not going to let this happen to her or her child, and so she decides to take Hugh up on this offer, this advert in the paper, and thinks this may be my way out if Hugh will agree to be my husband. That will only not solve my problem, so I won't be scandalised, but also solve his problem as well. And so she then heads off to Scotland to knock on Hugh's door to basically see if he will marry her. Now, she's quite worried about the fact that she's pregnant. Not many men would take on a child that is not his. However, because Hugh, like I said, is also very familiar with this sort of situation, he is more than happy to make sure that she is protected and agrees to take on the child as his as well. But the relationship that they start to build between them is really, really sweet. Some of the things that happen, I really like his family, and his dad in particular is really cute. And also when she finds out that he doesn't speak, she takes then time to learn sign language so that she could better communicate with him. And I just thought the whole thing was, like I say, a really delightful read. I was smiling throughout, really enjoyed these characters, and their romance was really nice, really sweet, and thoroughly enjoyed it. So then the last book that I want to mention, in fact 2 books, but I'll talk about them sort of like collectively if you like, is Hitting the Wall by Cate C. Wells, and then Against a Wall by Cate C. Wells. And this is book 1 and book 2 in the Stonecut County series. It's a these are both small town romances, and kind of like involve the same kind of family in this town. I rated both books 4.5 stars, absolutely love both of them, and so I want to give that a mention in here, because if small town romances are your thing, then I would definitely highly recommend this series and these 2 books. So Hitting a Wall is book 1. Like I say, it's small town, but it's also secret baby and sort of second chance romance between Shay and Kellum. And Kellum basically is part of the Wall family, and they're very, very influential and fairly rich in this town, have a lot of power, if you like, and he is now kind of the sheriff. But there's also lots of kind of like references to the fact that some of the more influential families in this town are pretty corrupt, and they're hiding lots of stuff. But Kellum himself is an upstanding member of the community. The thing is, when he was younger, he had a bit of a one-night stand with this girl called Shay. At the time she was underage, he didn't know that, because she kind of tricked him, I guess, in a way. But they had a fantastic night together. Now Shay then finds out that she's pregnant following this, and she really wants to tell Kellum, but she's kind of like steamrolled by his family to kind of disappear and not come back and not tell anyone. I say that is what she does, and so she leaves for a long period of time, and then eventually finds her way back to Stonecut County, but this time she has got a child with her who very much looks like Kellum. So when Kellum sees her walking along the side of the road with this little girl, he pulls over. He does recognise her, then does a double take because he recognises the little girl as well, and then kind of puts 2 and 2 together and realises that he's the father. And then when he finds out why she kept this a secret from him and he never knew, and more about his family, really some hard truths are kind of unveiled and you know, revealed, and it's quite heartbreaking to see. But I love the way he responds to this. I love the way he reacts when he finds out that he's a father, and then he will stop at nothing to make sure that he absolutely looks after Shay and his daughter. And then the second one also follows another of the Wall brothers, this time following Cash. And Cash is basically a bit goofy. He was always super popular in high school and actually used to pick on / bully Glenna, our heroine, when they were in high school. But he did it because, you know, the terrible reason that boys would pick on a girl is because he really liked her. And over the time, the kind of the small little things he did to try and get her attention turned to more bullying behaviour, making her look really stupid and feel bad about herself. And over time, she has really not liked Cash at all, tried to stay away from him, and of course he tries to get more and more of her attention by doing more and more idiotic things. By the time they're much older though, we're in a situation where Glenna's father is actually a journalist and owns the local paper, and he's exposed some of the stuff that we found out about in book 1, and so now their family are a bit of pariahs in sort of the town. And Cash basically says, let's fake date so that, you know, I'm really popular, I'm part of one of the really cool families in town that everybody loves, and if we date that will help with your reputation and people will start being nice to you and your dad again. And at first she says no because she doesn't want to spend any more time with him than she has to, but eventually agrees, and then of course they start spending more time together, start to really enjoy each other's company, and she starts to figure out he's not a bad guy after all. So a typical sort of fake dating kind of story, but I really love this whole town, these characters that Cate Wells had built in here, so I wanted to give both of those books a shout out because I really enjoyed them. At the minute there's only 2 books in the series, but if any more did come out I would definitely pick them up and give them a go. So there you go, that is my Q2 wrap up. So that is all of the stats from the last 3 months and also my 8 top reads of the last quarter as well. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content from me, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, bye. The bells. By the end of book 1, it ends on a massive cliffhanger, and do an honourable, but I'm going to give it an honourable, I can't say the word, but I'm going to give it an honourable, like I say, basically it's quite windy out today, and obviously it's a nice day so the neighbours are mowing their lawns and stuff, and so because I'm downstairs and the windows are open, there's lots of noises going on, so I'm now going to have to temporarily close the windows, which I hate to do, but just otherwise I think it's going to be too you know, too noisy. So hopefully that will make it a little bit better, but I still think you're going to be able to hear the neighbours mowing the lawn. So I apologise for that, but I'm going to crack on.